Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon to those far afield. I'm really fortunate today to welcome Gerald Leonard from the US. Gerald, welcome.
Hey, thank you so much, man. I'm really happy to be here, Lloyd, and looking forward to our conversation about AI.
Fantastic. Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself, Gerald?
Sure. As you can see from behind me, I'm a musician as well as a business owner and business consultant. And I love doing both. I love the idea because music has taught me so much. I started playing when I was 10 years old, and all the lessons I learned as a kid and learned about being a musician, I've used those lessons to help me grow as a professional in my career in project and program and portfolio management. You know, studying, really being, learning your instrument, finding great mentors and coaches, learning how to play well with others in a band, learning how to work together with others, always looking to learn and always looking for people who are setting the pace and learning how they're doing things to grow, and networking, meeting other people. So all those little lessons that you learn, that I learned as a musician and as a, playing bass, I've been leveraging and using in my business career as a CEO of two companies, as a consultant on my projects. And honestly, the best projects I've ever been on, it felt like playing music.
Fantastic. I love that. And Gerald, you're also a published author. Do you mention your books quickly?
Sure. My first book is called Culture is the Base, and it really is about business culture because business culture is about something that you feel. My second book is called Workplace Jazz, and it's about developing high-performing teams. And I draw a simulation between a jazz ensemble or jazz quartet, a small group, and the agile teams that we work in today and how they're very similar. And my latest book that was just released on August 1st is called A Symphony of Choices, where it's a business novel that teaches the principles of project portfolio management and a lot of the hands-on decision-making, workplace engagement, and project management, but it does it in a story format, and it's based on something called project-based learning. And I was honored to have Antonio Nito Rodriguez write the foreword for the book and endorse it. And he's the author of the HBR book, the Project Management Handbook for HBR. For Harvard Business Review.
Fantastic. So another worthy person to hear about their views around AI and project management. If I may, I'm going to dive into a couple of questions.
Sure.
Fantastic. What do you see as the main use cases or the main impacts of AI on project management?
I look at AI in project management as an 80-20 process. And here's what I mean. The first 10% of the information is about what you give the AI models, right? Because to get AI to work the way you really need it to work, it has to have a lot of data. Because AI, the goal and the value of AI is that it has this neural network platform that assimilates and takes in all of this data. And as it's taking all this data in, it learns from it. But you have to give it the right data. You have to give it the right amount of data. And then when you're querying it or prompting it, you have to make sure you're giving it the right prompts and really asking it the right information based on the data that it has. Then once it provides you that data, it does like 80% of the work, right? And then the other 10% is at the end. When you get the data and information, how do you use that information? How do you leverage that data? Whether it's something that you're writing, something that a report that's coming from it, insights from lessons learned, a project manager methodology or process you're having it take a look at, or insights from detailed reports that you're having to get. Now it's your time to go back into that data and add the final 10% to get the value that it's providing to you.
Fantastic. So once we get over the hurdle of feeding the machine, as it were, it sounds like very much about, the insights that you would get out there. And you mentioned a couple of insights there. Is there one or two particular areas where you think that the project management profession would really benefit?
I think that one, what AI can provide is automation on things that are redundant, or things that can be repeated, right? The system can automate, and it can do a lot of those things. But when it comes down to it, it really gets down into, let's say, lessons learned from, a lot of times we collect and we may have a database. I remember having a client where every project we would capture lessons learned. And we had a SharePoint site, and everyone would log all of their lessons learned. And one of the requirements I had in my methodology for the team and leading that group was that they needed to go back through that, query the lessons learned, and kind of review it. Right. And that's kind of the mechanical way. But imagine if at that time, if we would have had an AI tool that we could have fed all of those lessons learned into the AI platform. And then simply the project manager could have just prompted and says, hey, this is my project. And based on this type of project with this type of resources and this type of weighting and this type of stakeholder in these different countries, what are some of the lessons learned that I should be concerned about? It can then use all that data and give him a whole list of lessons learned based on that query. And that's the advantage that AI brings to the table, is that it can really hone that insight on specific things that someone may ask that's particular to their situation.
That's fantastic. And that's a fantastic example as well. What was going through my mind as you were speaking was, why just stop at the lessons? Why not serve up also the solutions to those lessons, and, maybe embed those in action plans and all of this sort of stuff?
Exactly. And it can definitely do all of that with all of the data that it's given. And again, you have to definitely make sure you're giving it all of the correct data. But, if, again, we're using platforms that are leveraging ChatGPT and others, it has so much information around that already to where you can ask those questions and ask it to give you different recommendations and alternatives, and it will provide all of that information to you.
Brilliant, brilliant. I love that example. Cool. I love that example. And of course, those benefits, I'm just thinking about speeding up the planning process, speeding up delivery. It doesn't stop. Do you think it would differ by sector if the type of AI that you would benefit from?
I mean, I think, I think the AI models themselves can benefit from the different sectors. And to answer your question, yes, because every sector has its nuances, right? I mean, even let's take project program and portfolio management. There's standards like the PMI standards or the Prince standards of project management. There are standards that we follow. But if you're in the construction industry, if you're in the fintech industry, if you're in the biotech industry, those standards have to be modified to fit their business models. Right. And it's the same thing with AI. Yeah. The AI model has to be structured to fit the model of how business is done and provide the answers, because a construction company is not going to ask the same questions that a biotech firm is going to ask. They're not going to ask the same questions as a medical firm or a fintech firm. So the data needs to be uniquely applied to that particular industry and sector and project type as well.
Yeah, it's interesting because you're using the term the question you ask, and I guess for me that's a really pertinent way of articulating it, because perhaps some of those sectors would ask the same question. Will my project deliver on time? If you're at the higher level, but like you said, as you get into those sectors, it's bound to differ. Isn't it?
It definitely is bound to differ. And it's not just about asking that generic question, if you will my project finish on time? But let's say you have a construction project that deals with a bridge, and let's say and because this is happening now, that they have something called smart concrete, where they have chips and data being put into the concrete so that the bridge that's being built from that concrete can talk back to the system and say, hey, there's some weakness here, there's some pressure here, or we're seeing some changes in the structure of the bridge. That's happening now. That's a very different question or prompting than if you're in a fintech space and you're trying to monitor millions or billions of transactions around different data hubs around the globe and take in consideration financial currency, exchange rates, and political blah, 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 all the things that happen that can affect a financial situation. And that's what I mean by being really specific about the questions that you ask when you're trying to allow ChatGPT or the AI models to give you back the data that you need.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. And who knew that bridges were starting to talk to each other?
Exactly.
You know.
I mean, think about the power of AI with automation with cars, right? I mean, we're seeing it now, but as we become more autonomous with vehicles and whatnot, having an AI model that can then assimilate that and constantly provide that feedback to the driver or to the the team or the systems that are running the traffic lights based on what's going on.
Yeah, you can see it happening. You can see it happening, and all of these systems increasingly intelligent. And
Exactly.
I'm going to come on to that now, actually, because to make this happen in AI and project management, what sort of challenges do you think are stopping us going even faster than we currently are?
I think that the only challenge I think that's stopping us is our own limitations and our own knowledge of what's possible, right? Because we're beginning to see some of the things that are possible. We're beginning to see some of the tools that are coming out. I'm seeing people use the platforms, the AI platforms, on a daily basis to create some great things. And so a part of it, though, is that we can also get inundated with so much content and so much data that we may not have the capacity to absorb all that's coming at us that AI can provide. And so, there's things like, and I think you and I had a previous conversation where I talked about things like one of my coaches, I've learned how to do something called photo reading, which allows me to take a 300 or 400 page book and get through it within an hour, have 5 or 6 major questions I want to learn from the author, get those questions, scan the book into my non-conscious mind, and really walk away and be able to have a great conversation about the content. But so things like those kinds of tools or skills we're going to have to bring on. And so it's really increasing our own capability to be able to keep up with all the data that's going to be coming at us with AI, and also learning how we can leverage it in a very ethical way as well.
And I don't know whether these exist or not, Gerald, but I can imagine you could use AI to help you with that problem as well. How do you prioritize what to review and all of that sort of stuff?
Exactly. So imagine, when it comes down to, that's like the portfolio questions, right? Like, taking the portfolio models, taking the Gartner model, transform the business, grow the business, run the business, attaching that to different projects, and then allowing your AI model based on all the different permutations and complexities of the economy and all the analysis that it has to go through to help you identify, which projects, based on what's the economic trends, which projects are going to be the best ones. Because a lot of that data right now is more manual that we're doing, or it's more conversational. There are different automated tools available, but I can imagine an AI tool being embedded into a portfolio decision model that would allow executives to have access to better decisions really within seconds.
Yeah. It's got to be, isn't it? And of course, no doubt, no matter what, and certainly in the short term, whatever the system churns out, it will still be dependent upon the loudest voice in the room, the politics of the situation, as it were. And I wonder, from your perspective, that's starting to touch on, from my mind, like resistance to change and, all of these soft sides. Do you have any view about, the uptake of some of this stuff?
Sure. And, that's something that affects businesses and projects, from eternity, right? It always has. It's the human factor, right? And so AI is being upgraded, but have we upgraded? And so has organizations upgraded? And it really depends on the culture of the business, because a culture of, I'm going to talk louder than you, that's a cultural issue.
Yeah.
That's really not, it's not really just a one person issue. It's something that's being allowed to happen in an organization because the culture. And I see culture. Remember, I wrote my first book was called Culture is the Base. And the
Yeah.
7 principles really quickly were having a great vision, having great values, having great stories, having buy-in, having lessons learned, having your environment, and then really executing on that. So those are 7 principles that I talk about. But that second principle, values. Values are attributes that govern behavior. So if I establish in my organization the values that we're going to live by, and I use those values as criteria for who I hire, and I bring in a bunch of people who are, let's say I'm Disney World, and I want to bring people in who are just naturally happy. Just naturally happy. I don't have to have a class on happiness. Because I'm hiring people that are just naturally happy, because that's the culture I'm trying to create. So when organizations are dealing with, those types of issues, it's really not an AI challenge. It's really a culture issue. And it's really those soft skills issues. And that's going to become more important, because as AI takes over all of the manual work and automated work, then we're left to be humans.
Yeah. You took the words right out of my mouth there. That will become increasingly important. And I think PMI, for just to name check those guys, I think they see that with these, the importance of the power skills and all of that sort of stuff. But, change management's been around for a long time. And like you said, any successful project should have a change element of it. So
exactly. And have a change and a transition element. And it's interesting. I'll share one project that I was brought in. And this is like, I'm still working with this particular agency here in the U.S. as a Department of Transportation agency. But I was brought in 2014 to help them with a program of projects. They had about 14,000 projects and a $16 billion budget. They're the 3rd largest in the country. The challenge was they had brought in a consultant to implement this solution. And I know the company, they're really good. They're really good at what they do. Where there was a misstep was when they rolled out a solution that they developed, they didn't consider the culture of the people in the periphery areas of the business and how loud their voices were, and how if they push back, the people who are in the front seat and meeting with you and testing solution didn't have the power to override what the people out in the periphery who didn't have input into the system. So when I was brought in and I learned about the fact that they've tried this before, I knew it's not a technology issue.
Yeah.
It is a cultural issue. It is, and as a musician, here's the part that I love to share with people about being a musician. When you're playing a performance as a musician, to me, the people on the front row are like the people that come to the meetings and they sign the check and they're right there with you, right? But you also have people who are in the middle aisle. You have people who are in the back of the auditorium. You have people who are in the balcony. And guess what? They paid for their tickets too.
Yeah.
And they want a great performance. They want to be a part of the process. They want to be a part of the experience. So as a musician, you're thinking, I have to reach the guy in the back as well as the person in the front. In business, we don't always think that way.
Yeah.
We focus on the people that we see who are in the room with us, and we forget about the person who's looking at their watch saying, hey, I'm about to retire in 5 years. I don't want to learn anything new.
Yeah.
So how do I get that person who's looking at their watch saying, I don't want to learn anything new, to learn something new? Then I have to position it as, this is going to make the last 5 years of your career so much more enjoyable, because it's going to take over things that you don't like to do so that you can focus on the things that you love to do. Oh, now you got my attention.
Yeah, fantastic. And I guess really that's what we're saying here about, what prevents people adopting AI in project management. It's people, it's a change management answer.
It's fear, because as soon as you say change, neurologically, our amygdala kicks in and it says, no. It's like trying to take your dog for a walk. He puts his paws down. He puts his paws down and says,
I've
no.
seen some dogs like that being dragged down the street. You know
Exactly.
that.
And that's what it's like when we're trying to get our stakeholders to change and we're giving them too much change. We're not giving them enough information. And change is scary because you're saying, wait a minute, you're changing the process, you're changing the system. And anytime we do project work, we're changing the culture because we're changing the operations of things. We're changing systems. We're changing, think about the environment. It's not just the physical environment, it's the virtual environment. That's the software, it's policies. So change has to be done in a way that people can embrace. I'd say get 1% better, implement small changes, do things. In fact, I'll go back to that example of the Department of Transportation project I was working on. It was a year and a half of work on that project where we were doing what I would call curb and gutter work, which is, laying the pipes underneath the ground, and they were starting to see better data and better system operations, but their interface never changed. Yeah. It wasn't until a year and a half later that we started introducing a new interface. And when we did, we gave them 3 things to do. And when they clicked on a link for the reports, they saw 3 reports. Is this it? This is the new system? This is what this is all about? Oh, this is nothing. I can do that. So we immediately had their buy-in because they saw a system that was simple and straightforward. And instead of having a long training, we did an hour workshop and gave them a quick reference guide that they could put on their desk. And when they got into the system, they could just follow the quick reference guide and get their work done. Didn't have to have this huge manual. And we said, we're going to run this project like an iPhone. You never get a user manual when you get an iPhone.
Yeah, no, exactly.
It's a very complicated system. Yeah. But the complexity is all hidden. And that's what has to be done. So think about it. AI is a very complicated system. But if we hide the complexity and give the user what they need to make their lives better so they can go to their ball games with their kids, they don't have to work on weekends, then you're going to get that human adoption and you're going to allow the humans to be human.
I love this conversation. I can't help it. It keeps jumping in my head, though. I need to get some doggy treats for project sponsors, yeah? So anyway, on that very intellectual note, we should come to an end. And Gerald, thank you so much for your time today. If I may, just one last question, which is if there was a single takeaway that you wanted people to hear from this conversation, what would it be?
I would say get 1% better every day. Just 1%, because when you get 1% better in all the different areas of your life and even in your business, it quells your amygdala and you don't have that amygdala hijack. Your brain says, oh, I can do this. It helps. It basically moves resistance, because anytime we want to do something better for ourselves, an exercise program, change of a diet, implementing AI in our organization, teaching people new processes, resistance rears its head.
Yeah.
But if it's only 1% better, every day, then resistance like, oh, okay, that's not a big change. But over time, it becomes a habit. It becomes more of a part of the character. It becomes more of the integrated pieces of the organization. And if we're doing the right things, it really transforms the business in a radical way, but in a way that people can adjust to. And they can do it and they can breathe. And it's really about being human.
Brilliant. I love that. Well, Gerald, thanks once again for your time today. And I look forward to catching up in the future.
Definitely. Lloyd, I really appreciated our conversation. Thank you.